Good morning, everyone. My name is Emilia Bustos. I'm a master's student in the Education Policy and Analysis program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I'm very happy to welcome all of you today to our first panel of the day regarding teachers' professional development. This panel focuses on how AI can empower teachers by providing personalized coaching, automating administrative tasks, and facilitating collaboration across geographic and cultural boundaries. With limited access to ongoing professional development in many parts of the Global South, AI-driven tools have the potential to deliver scalable and context-sensitive training solutions. Discussions will explore how educators can adapt pedagogy to effectively integrate AI and how school systems can support these transitions in ways that respect local needs and capacities. As students of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, we know firsthand how vital it is to equip educators as sustainable educational change starts with well-prepared teachers. AI has the potential to bridge the gaps in professional development, helping teachers better serve their students and communities. I am very honored to introduce today's moderator, Nissi Madu. Nissi is managing partner at Co-Creation Hub Limited, Africa's foremost technology innovation center, where she leads its startup support and EdTech portfolios. She's an accomplished education professional committed to using technology to reshape education landscapes in Africa. Nissi's expertise lies in multiple areas, including strategy, project management, digital learning, product design and development, stakeholders management, business development, and program design and management across over 20 programs in 7 African countries. Her strategic insight has led to the development of impactful frameworks that have guided education initiatives across the continent. Please welcome Nissi.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to be part of this conversation. It's one that is very, very dear to my heart. And I like the theme of the conference, and especially the part about stories, because stories are very powerful. And I'm going to take a cue from Dina's book this morning and tell you a few stories. I'll keep it very simple, 2 stories. In my day job, I wake up every day thinking about how to support innovators, government, teachers across various countries in Africa, just thinking about how they can leverage innovation and technology to improve education. I remember sometime last year, and you know, something that Dina had said in her presentation really connected with me, and it was about leadership, an important role that leadership plays in transforming education systems. I was in a rural county in Kenya, speaking to a county director of education and just talking about what areas or goals or objectives that they had with transforming education and, you know, where they wanted to start. And he said to me, for as far as I'm concerned, the teacher is the classroom and the classroom is the teacher. And so I want to start by supporting and empowering my teachers, because if I do that, then they will be able to transform learning in their classroom. And I thought that that was very inspiring. And now let's go a few thousand miles away from Kenya, and we're in Nigeria. And about 3-4 years ago, when we were working with a particular state, Ogun State is in the southwestern part of Nigeria, and we were implementing an education program that was focused on leveraging technology to improve STEM education. So we're working with, you know, hundreds of STEM teachers from across the state. There was this particular teacher who, you know, is a math teacher in a very rural secondary school in the state, and it was sort of his first time engaging with technology and the power that it had to create, you know, exciting lessons or help him improve his skills to be able to transform, you know, his math lessons for his students. And this teacher was so driven by that experience that he started to improve himself and started to support other teachers. And fast forward 5 years, just last year, this teacher was one of the top 50 finalists for the Global Teacher Prize. And just looking at the trajectory of that teacher's story, he's representative of millions of teachers in our schools across the Global South who are passionate, are driven, want to do more to be able to transform learning in the classroom, and for whom we need to provide the support, and basically why we're excited about what it is that AI can do to be able to support them. And I think the question about, do we just jump the teachers and go straight to the students? As we provide that, I hope that a lot of the presentations that they would make would also do that. And so on this panel today, our very wonderful speakers are going to start with presentations, and then there will be a bit of time for questions and answers as well on their presentations. And so I'm going to start by introducing Maria Barron. She's the co-lead of the World Bank EdTech team and a research analyst with the World Bank Group's global education practice, where she focuses on the transformative role of AI in education. She has co-authored over 25 global EdTech knowledge products and managed key partnerships. Her notable projects include developing an EdTech toolkit for policymakers and providing insights on remote learning in the Global South. Through the EdTech Policy Academy, her efforts have supported over 1,000 policymakers worldwide. Maria has significantly contributed to shaping digital skills and developing technology-based education solutions in various countries. Welcome, Maria. I think, please put your hands together. Absolutely. Thank you. And so we're going to start with Maria's presentation. Maria, over to you, please. I'll give you this.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I actually just arrived this morning from Costa Rica, where we're going to do also something interesting in AI and education. As they say, pura vida. We need to have that positive attitude. Let me start by taking 1 second to thank the students who organized this. I have been a student a long time ago, and I organized a conference I know is very time intensive. So all of the students from the Graduate School of Education, from law school, and from the Kennedy School, really kudos to you, and thank you for inviting us. Okay, so we were told to prepare very quick presentations just to spark conversation, and then we can have a more interactive discussion. So I would like to focus this presentation on 2 countries. The first is Nigeria, and the second one is Peru. I'm Peruvian, by the way, but I also feel very much Nigerian in many ways. Thank you. So let me start. So I will share a little bit about the design of the programs in Edo, Nigeria, and Lima, Peru. I'll discuss some quick challenges and opportunities we had, and some emerging lessons going forward. I think something key to note is that in this space we're all learning. And I think having that curiosity mindset and not be too optimistic or too pessimistic is something that we need to strive to be, to learn, and evaluate, which is one of the ideas I want to hone in a lot in this conversation. So let me start with Nigeria and the experience we had there. You see there in the picture 2 students that took part in this program. One of them, Eki Odion. These are not the real names, but these are the most common names used in Edo State in Nigeria. And you would ask me, what am I talking about a program that was targeted to students when this panel is about teachers? And this goes to the question, can we skip the teachers? My answer is a complete no. Because I feel that we need to apply the lessons that we have learned in EdTech over all of these years to any program that incorporates AI in education. And for me, it's clear that the teacher is the biggest predictor of the success of any educational intervention that uses technology. So even if the program was not targeted at them, they played a key role in coaching and guiding students in the use of AI. And because we're still in the pioneering stage, I feel this guided support, it is key. And I feel like training teachers in AI literacy is a precondition for the success of any intervention. So very quickly describing the program, and Dean already gave me the favor of talking a little bit about the program. So it was a 6-week after-school program where we use Copilot as an AI-powered tutor for students in senior secondary education, and it was focused on enhancing their English lessons. So let's say in a week, they would have a lesson on argumentative essays. Then the next day, or maybe a couple of days after, they would have this session using the AI tutor focus on building over the lesson they had. The student would start by giving them the connection to the exercise they would do to the previous lesson they already had. They would start the use 45 minutes of the AI tutor. They would share one device, and this is something I will get to later. We need to design for real conditions. There are not enough devices in most classrooms in the Global South. So we developed a design that actually incorporated what was already there. And also incorporated another layer, which was sharing between students and discussing the questions they wanted to ask and encouraging a little bit more of less distraction, we found. And then finally, the teacher would close each session with a reflection part. In that reflection part, students would say if they have found any content that maybe they didn't understand or maybe it was not reliable. And we also had monitors who ran across the classroom, making sure that the students spend the time on the task and not other things. So before the program, actually, it was a lot of work and a lot of thought that we put into designing this. We prepared a 3-piece toolkit for the teachers with online resources, with an introduction to AI literacy, and with a very step-by-step in instructions on the implementation at the classroom level. We also put a lot of emphasis on potential benefits, but also potential risks, and gave them advice to address each of them. This was not easy. Thank you. This was not easy, but I think it was very needed. Then we also prepared guidelines for students on AI literacy, and we held an in-person training. During the implementation, we had monitoring, we developed a community of practice, and focal points for tech support. So there you see some photos of the training taking place. On day 1, we focused on AI concepts. Day 2, on prompt testing, and of them also developing some of their own prompts. And in day 3, role-playing, some of them as students, anticipating challenges and potential solutions. I don't have enough time, but I will tell you the story of one of those photos, the one, if you like soccer or football, the one with a teacher wearing Manchester City and Manchester United jersey. But we'll get time to do that later. So the outcome of the training. The teachers were at first very apprehensive about the use of AI in the classroom. But they, at the end of the training, they were more optimistic and enthusiastic about this because they felt like it could offer the chance to have to test something that could help students, and they wanted to be a part of that. So we evaluated the program. As mentioned before, we have very positive results. These slides will be shared with you, so I won't go into much detail, and we have bigger effect sizes for girls. And very quickly on the program in Lima, it's actually ongoing. We started it in March. And this one is focused on teachers. And 3 ideas to highlight on this one. We co-developed this with teachers. So we held a focus group. We did a contest to identify innovative teachers in Metropolitan Lima. This is 6th grade, primary school level. And they also co-designed with us all of the materials. and they identified 4 use cases that they thought would be more impactful for the practice. I think co-designing is a key idea that should come out of this conference. Co-designing with students, co-designing with teachers. You will see there the material, the photo of the material, the photo of the trainings. And we trained actually 16 teachers to replicate the training to 690 teachers. And it was very recently on March 6 and 7. And for the ongoing implementation, we are designing an incentives method. We are providing ongoing technical support, and we are providing regular WhatsApp group interactions as well. We are documenting each step of this, so we hope to have results from this by end of December. And I will very quickly go through my last 2 slides. So some of the challenges: insufficient connectivity and lack of devices, varied level of digital skills among teachers, lack of time in their workday to dedicate to training. And there are also opportunities, which is, I think, and somebody mentioned this during their questions, is that we need to design programs for sustainability. And we need to design for real conditions, not ideal ones that most schools in the Global South don't have. And we need to provide support. Teachers should not feel alone in this. It's a new technology. There is a lot of fear. Some of them fear being replaced. I think it's important and a no-brainer to focus on AI fluency. And we need to also to think about this in the long term, from pre-service, in-service training, and ongoing training support. And finally, 3 lessons. And one of them I already mentioned, the precondition. AI literacy as a precondition, not something that is an add-on for an educational program. Then we need to focus on context and needs-based, which is something I mentioned before as well, on having the focus, the student or the teacher and what they need. And finally, something I started with, we need to evaluate, and evaluate. We are at a learning stage. None of us have all of the answers or what is the future in AI in education, but we need to be curious. And I think having that mindset is going to be key for all of us at industry, at international organizations, in academia as well. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Evaluate, evaluate, evaluate. Co-design, and essentially design with the realities in mind. And we're going to go to our next speaker, Dr. Eric Klopfer. He's a professor and director of the Scheller Teacher Education Program and the Education Arcade at MIT. He's also a co-principal investigator of MIT's RAISE initiative in AI education. His research centers on using technology and pedagogy to enhance understanding of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, and systems. He's the co-author of books such as Adventures in Modeling, The More We Know, and Resonance Games, and the author of Augmented Learning. His lab has developed software and platforms utilized by millions, along with online courses that have reached hundreds of thousands. Klopfer is also the co-founder and past president of the nonprofit Learning Games Network. Please put your hands together for him.
I'm going to stand so it's a little bit easier to see here. Thanks for organizing this conference. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. I'll be brief because I need to see the times over there. I'm Eric. I'm one of the co-directors of the RAISE program, along with Hal Abelson, who's another co-director, and Cynthia Brazil, who's the director, and a large suite of staff, many of whom I see in the room today. John, I think I saw Kate back there, who does a lot of AI literacy work with us. Maybe Danielle is here somewhere. So they're the ones who really put all this work together. So thank you for their work. So RAISE is about advancing learning, education, and empowerment through AI. We primarily do 2 things. One is AI literacy, AI fluency, as we call it. So teaching kids about AI and how to use AI effectively and ethically. And the other is thinking about AI augmented learning. So how do we think about teaching and learning in the era of AI? So I'm actually going to not talk about those things right now. I'm happy to distribute these slides to other people if they'd like to see them, so you can look at some of the details later. Really, it is about preparing students to be responsible and creative citizens in the era of AI. We take a really constructionist approach to our work, thinking about how we get kids to create things, build things, share things socially. That's really what we think this is all built upon. We have a number of frameworks we use. As I mentioned, we like to call it AI fluency. It's a much deeper understanding than AI literacy. One of them that we use is the UNESCO AI competency framework. Many of you may be familiar with this, but it's a really, really great framework. Some of the folks who we work with have worked on this. And again, there's lots of information here, but it's about human-centered mindset, ethics, a lot of really important foundational principles within AI fluency. And I'll talk more about the AI fluency work in a second after I take a quick detour. I'm going to try to answer a few questions, I think, give my perspective on a few questions that were asked earlier. What is AI good for? When should we use AI? We should use AI when it supports good pedagogy. That's the primary use of AI. It shouldn't be about when it's convenient or like when we think it replicates some business practice. It's about when it supports good pedagogy. And this is a project we work on called CALE, which stands for Collaborative AI for Learning. And the idea is it's about how do we support and scale collaborative and project-based learning in schools. So how do we make it easier for teachers to be able to work with large groups of students when they're working on independent projects and independent group projects with each other. And the AI here is meant to sort of facilitate group work. So how do you get kids to work together? Learning is a social enterprise, and we really want to focus on what does that look like? How do we get kids to work together, to collaborate with each other, and think about what does that project-based learning environment look like, and how do we actually get it to scale with technological supports? Answer to another question, no, we should not go around the teachers. AI needs to support teachers and supporting students. It's a foundational principle of what we think about. As I just said, learning is a social enterprise. You can think about AI feedback that you've gotten in apps, like it tells you you're walking too slow or eating too much or whatever it is, and it doesn't matter to you. You don't care about what the AI thinks about you. If a person says that to you, you care about what they say. It's the same words. But when it comes from a human being, it matters. And so having a real human being, a real teacher in the classroom working with kids who they care about is essential to human learning. Teachers need to be part of the AI conversation. So we need to think about teachers being part of the conversation when we think about policy, we think about curriculum design. Great point on my next slide. I'll talk about teachers as co-designers, but teachers really need to be involved in the process all from the start, which includes co-design. So we need to think about teachers on teams working with us as we're designing things for classrooms. Teachers need to stay up to date on AI. And this isn't like, unfortunately, it's not like the era of the internet when we can sort of get a refresher every 10 years on how the internet works and be okay with it. We need to have continual professional development on how AI works and what you can do with it. This is a course we created with Google about a year or so ago, Generative AI for Educators. It's since been translated into Spanish. So there's a Spanish version of it. There's also an Arabic version of it. Again, the QR codes you can get later. But those are versions that are online that you can find. And these are like 2-hour courses that are like, how do you use AI in your own professional practice? How do you understand what it is? It's not about how you immediately apply it to your own students. One of our big projects that we have from our group is called the Day of AI program. It was originally a program housed completely at MIT. Since then, we've spun it out into its own nonprofit. We continue to develop curriculum for it. But because of the scale, the global scale that we're trying to reach with it, it's now its own nonprofit, which deals with a lot of the professional development, which I'll talk about in a minute. Day of AI has a series. Maybe I'll let the slide build here. Day of AI is a series of modules for classes K through 12. It can be used with computers. It can be used without computers. It can be used with students on computers. It can be a computer at the front of the room. It's, for the most part, technology agnostic. So it's not about a specific technology that you're using. It can be adapted to different places in the world. But it's a series of curriculum that can be used every subject, every grade. There's modules for teachers. Teacher training is a huge part of this. And dayofai.org does this now. So there's an online, and there is also in-person professional development that happens through Day of AI. It's based on a train-the-trainer model. So we have trainers around the world working to help train teachers in the curriculum and bring it into their own classrooms. It's really a global effort. So I'll talk about how we're sort of scaling in just a second. But the idea is that it's not the same curriculum just distributed throughout the world. It's not the US curriculum that gets distributed everywhere. But we work with local partners to help adapt the curriculum, think about the professional development aspects to it, And that's how it gets to scale. Since 2022, when we launched, we've had, I think that number is higher now, and we're about to launch this year's version in May, so we'll probably sort of break the 1 million student threshold this year. We do work with regional partners, and that's a really important part of what we're doing. You can see here, the colors are the places where we had regional hubs in 2024, and those that we have in 2025 where we have regional hubs. And again, those regional hubs work with us to adapt the curriculum locally. So it's about thinking about what is the technology they have available to them, what are the metaphors and examples that they use. All of it is adapted to the local curriculum. And this is a list of those places. So this year, there's a Day of AI in the Philippines, in Australia, in Chile, in India, and Vietnam. And this year, we're also adding ones in Uzbekistan, Mongolia, and with the CIMO organization, which does Math Olympiad. So with that, I think I'm out of time, and that's perfect timing. This is our website. I'll leave that up just for a second. If you're welcome to go to it. That's what the new website will look like, but that's the link to the current website there. Thank you.
Thank you. And so very quickly, we'll go on to our next speaker, Seiji Isotani. He's a leading Brazilian scientist renowned for his pioneering work in artificial intelligence in education and the gamification of learning. Among his significant achievements, Isotani has successfully integrated AI into resource-limited environments and designed customized gamification tools to make education more accessible, effective, and enjoyable. As a technical and scientific advisor to the Brazilian Ministry of Education, he played a crucial role in shaping Brazil's K-12 computer science curriculum, impacting over 40 million students nationwide. He is currently the president-elect of the International Artificial Intelligence in Education Society. Please put your hands together for him.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'll try to be faster than Eric. I don't know how. All right, so first of all, I need to thank my kids. They let me to be here. So, yeah. They are really, they're proud of my life. Yeah. All right. So I also want to thank people who are actually doing the work. So I'm just here, like, talking to you, but there are many people doing the work behind me. One of them is Leonardo over there. So say hello, Leo. So he's doing several work with Brazilian government. And president-elect of AI and Education Society, is also important to say that AI is just an umbrella of many different things. So many different technologies, applications, and so on, right? So we know there are several benefits of AI in education: personalization, 24/7 support, feedback, and so on. And we also know the risks of AI in education. Colleagues from Asia have developed the framework to think about this. So privacy, accountability, risks, perceived risks, and so on. But the topic I want to talk today is the notion that AI has become this new source of inequality, and we need to address how. And just to think about this, the IMF present the graph showing countries that are advanced economies, and they are well prepared and well exposed to AI. And we have the low-income communities that are not well exposed and not prepared to use AI. So the challenge is becoming a huge gap. So the question I ask myself every day when I wake up in the morning is, how can we bring the benefits of AI to teachers and students who are in communities where technology and infrastructure are almost not available? All right. So, and the notion that I want to share to you is somehow we need to rethink how we design this kind of AI technologies for education. The idea is try to leapfrog, as Dana said, and we need to think about two things: context and needs. So let me present the context. So these are contexts in the global south. So for this city, it's Abaré in the southeast of Brazil. So here is the north of Brazil in the Amazon. So when you go there and you see here, this is a classroom, and if you see in the bottom, so it's water. So when the tide goes up, so the water goes up, and when tide goes down, right now, the water is over there. So these are the situation that we live in the Global South. And we start to do some analysis of what kind of infrastructure we have there. And for example, cell phones are available almost everywhere, right? 90% of these regions have access to internet. The access to cell phone. When we look into internet, then it's a problem because around just 15% of these regions have really access to internet, the internet that you can actually use as we are using right now. So we did some analysis. It's going to take 100 years for low-income communities to actually bridge this gap. So the other thing is when we are thinking about AI technologies, as our colleague said, so the idea is trying to augment teacher capabilities so they can be better teachers. So the idea is how we can design AI technologies for teachers, right? And then we can think about a classroom like this. So when we are talking about personalization of education, you need to consider a place like this that is fairly common in Brazil. So finally, thinking about digital skills. Many people are trying to engage and improve digital skills, but with AI technology, we can think in the other direction. How can we design technology that do not require more digital skills from teachers? All right, so this is the context and the needs. So what is interesting, we asked 400 teachers about what are their needs. So, and we ask in different ways. So what kind of superpower do you need to be a better teacher, right? So when we are talking about AI, we're trying to give it superpower for teachers so they can be better teachers. So we have several different questions, and we have beautiful analysis. So that's why I bring this beautiful picture over here. But we can see like teacher needs, like improve strategies to improve students' learning. And then we can connect with the teacher goals, why they want to do this. So for example, provide better feedback for students. And why do you need, or what kind of technologies do you need to provide better feedback? So you can connect, for example, with proxemics, which is the ability for teachers to actually go in several directions in classroom to connect with different students. And we can look into students' data as well to understand what is happening with students. And finally, we can connect with actually physical technologies that provide those information to teachers. All right, so we have those beautiful analyses, right? So I need to bring those here. So at the end, I just want to give an example of a real application. So how to improve writing skills of K-12 students in this kind of context. So we create a cell phone application because cell phone is available everywhere. Internet is not available, right? So a teacher can actually, they just need to know how to take a picture. So they can take a picture of essays of students. So anyway, so they can take pictures in any different way, right? And whenever internet is available, it doesn't need to be available all the time. Whenever internet is available, we send those photos to our servers and we do the magic. So we use AI, computer processing to, or computer vision to extract the text, do the segmentation using natural language processing, segmentation of words, and so on. And the beauty part of this is we can actually provide a dashboard for teachers so they can understand, I'm sorry it's in Portuguese, but they can understand what the students are doing well, what they are doing not so well, and how they can improve it. And we have another page with some information for them to improve their practices. So that's interesting because it's real-time data that teachers can actually improve their practices. And actually, Leonardo is working with WordGen, which is developed here at the Grad School of Education, where we can actually connect the dots. Wonderful. And what is interesting, so we allow any teacher in Brazil to use that too, that we developed. And when we saw the data, the teachers who use the most are those in vulnerable regions. So we designed for them, thinking about them, and when we saw the data, they were the one who used the most. And we also did an impact analysis to see if, well, does this technology works? And what we saw is, yes, it works for students, so they improve their writing skills, and we look into the inequalities, for example, in terms of gender and rural and urban schools. And for example, for gender and urban and rural schools, we didn't see any difference in terms of statistically difference. So it means that all the schools learn, and we do not happen often when we are talking about policies using technology. So this is super interesting. So we apply with 500,000 students, 20,000 teachers in 1,500 municipalities in Brazil. Very interesting result. So the message I want to give to you here is actually the Global South can be the powerhouse to develop AI in education tools and applications. So it's just a way for us to rethink how we actually design those works. So hopefully we can, together here, discuss how we can actually improve AI in education for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very inspiring there. I'll start with one question and then we'll open it up to the audience. I'll just also allow the team to guide us on how much time we have. There's something that every single speaker mentioned and agrees on, and I'm glad that we all agree. One, we can't bypass teachers. We need to absolutely, it's not often you see a number of panelists agree on a single thing, right? We agree that we can't bypass teachers. We need to work with teachers. We need to co-design with teachers. We need to take into consideration their context and their needs. But we've also talked about the realities on the ground, which is teachers have varying capacity, varying skill levels. And so I'm curious, and perhaps I think each of the speakers can shed a bit more light on this. What key elements do people need to take into consideration as you're co-designing with teachers? How do you bring these teachers together? How do you select the initial set of co-designers, taking into consideration all of these factors that we've mentioned in terms of the realities on the ground? Maria, perhaps we start with you.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. I think it's important to talk to all types of teachers, the ones who are more advanced in their use of AI and the ones who are have maybe never even used it. This happened to us when we were co-designing with teachers in Lima, because the intervention covers all metropolitan Lima. We try to select schools in all areas, and we try to select schools that were well equipped and schools that had almost no equipment at all and very low connectivity and in areas that were more vulnerable. So I think it's important to have that mix. In the second stage of the design, we wanted to work, in addition to the ones who were at varied levels, the ones who were pioneers. That was why we designed this contest where more than almost 300 teachers applied, and we chose 18 of them to be the innovative ones to co-design the material with us. And we find that having that mix was very good. But I wanted to add one final point. I think it's important to, as both of the other panelists have mentioned as well, to listen to teachers and the needs they have. It may be that in Lima, they want to use it for lesson planning, which was one of the uses that we determined. But it may be that in Cairo or that in San Jose, they think that another use is better because of the way they teach. So I think it's important not to impose a use, but actually co-design the use with them. And according to their day-to-day, what are the areas that they would like more support with?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, there's a QR code for Slido up there. If you could please scan and put down your questions, and so that I could just pick it up here and ask the questions to our panelists. I hope everyone heard me. Thank you. You try to use my teacher voice. Eric, please go ahead.
Sure. I don't have a lot to add to that because I think that was an excellent answer. I think it's sort of having that diversity of teachers. I think having pioneers. I think having pioneers is important because I think you need, and not necessarily pioneers in the dimension that you're sort of working in. So if I'm working in AI, it's not about the AI pioneers. It's people who are willing to try something new, willing to sort of think outside the box. Those are the people who we typically work with in our first phases. But they also need to be empathetic. They need to understand their colleagues who don't have that same mindset. They need to understand, hopefully, maybe even work with those teachers and help bring those into the mix as well. Because I ultimately think, this is not a process that happens overnight. We don't all of a sudden like flip a switch and everybody's sort of like the pioneer. Instead, it's a slow stage adoption, like in every other aspect of adoptions of new processes and technologies that we see. And so we need the people in that first phase to be able to do that, but those people need to be the people who can connect them to the next phase and help bring that next phase along. So that's another aspect that we think about for those folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
I think it's interesting for us to think about how we can talk with teachers. I've been working with several teachers, and sometimes it's really hard to extract information that is meaningful for the designing process. And the way how you ask and how you interact with teachers make a whole lot of difference. So the challenge for us is not just thinking about the teachers, but thinking about how they perceive the technology. You want people that at the same time they are open to use technology, but skeptical of using technology. In that way, we can actually work well and trying to extract information that is relevant for designing technologies. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think there's so many gems from that in terms of identifying pioneers, but not just pioneers who would design from their own use case, but also really understanding their other colleagues and seeing how to connect that dots to be able to support them. And something very important as well that you said, Seiji, is how do you also in that co-design process ensure that you're able to extract, information from them and ask them all of these questions in ways that they understand and are able to give you the juice that you need to design that. There's an interesting question here, and it says, AI seems great for reading, writing, and arithmetic, but what about teamwork? Can it support our ability to assess students' ability to collaborate? Eric?
So we've used it to facilitate collaboration. I mentioned the Kale project. I can say a little bit more about that. It's a phone-based thing. So there's an agent that lives on a phone that sits in the group and listens in on the conversation, and basically gives guidance a little bit related to the project they're working on, but a lot related to the sort of how to work with each other in the group. But there's a group at CU Boulder, I know, that does a lot of work on using AI to assess collaboration. And there's a couple other, that's the one I know of offhand, but there's a couple other places around the world that are also doing this, but that is something that people are working on. And that includes both, most of the stuff I've seen is online collaboration. So how to use AI to assess online collaboration, so people working together online. There's some emerging stuff that relates to ours that's about sort of how do you do that face-to-face as well. But I definitely think that there's possibilities in doing that.
Yeah, I can add on that. So my PhD was in collaboration and AI in many years ago. So one thing that's interesting when we are thinking collaborative learning and AI, there are several different pieces that we need to put together. So one is group formation. So how you think about helping the students to work in the best situation possible, right? So you don't want to put students in a hostile environment. You don't want to put a teacher in an environment where they need to lead with tough challenges that is not related to education at all. So you have this emotion that do not come from the activity, but from outside. So you need to think about this. And there are several AI algorithms that helps you to think about how you can form groups. There another piece of work that is design. So collaborative learning scripts. So how can you actually design activities that match the teacher goals as well students' interests? So you need some mechanisms to try to understand how are your students and what they need, so what the teacher goals are and what the teacher needs, and try to do this match, both in terms of activities, both in terms of materials. There are tons of work on that space as well. And there is another piece of, which is interaction analysis that Eric was mentioning. So how you can actually look into students' outputs and interactions and try to understand the interactions between each other and how the process of meaning making occurs. So it's a super interesting challenge, and I think there are space and room to develop even better technologies nowadays.
Just a quick example of a collaboration as a byproduct of the use of AI. So in Lima, teachers in the 6th grade, they teach all subjects, and they work together in the same school to develop all of the lessons. So, as I mentioned before, one of the uses they wanted to focus on was lesson planning. And they thought, this tool can help us plan together faster because we can develop more content, and content that is at the level of the best students, at the level of regular students, and at the level of students who are struggling a little bit. In Edo, when we were training teachers, a lot of them, even though we were not focusing on AI use for teachers, they also came up with many ways that they could collaborate, creating images, improving presentations for students. So I think, and I think Dina mentioned this before, AI is a tool, and I think it can be incorporated as part of regular teamwork processes, and it can also foster them.
Thank you so much. Speaking of, resources and contextualized resources, there's a question here from Ama Peiris that says, what are the challenges in developing contextualized resources in content-poor contexts, e.g. training AI on localized resources and different languages? And I think this question ties very strongly to what we're talking about with context and needs and co-designing with teachers. And so from your experience, what challenges have you seen and how have you addressed those challenges as well?
Okay, I can start with that. So I think this ties also with another question that was made in the keynote, which was, how do you start designing an intervention using AI? And in both cases, where we're doing this in Peru and Nigeria, and now Costa Rica, and in some states in Brazil, it needs to come from a contextual need. There is, and my colleague Mike Trucano is here, one of the founders of the EdTech team in the World Bank. The first principle we have is to ask why. What is the use that we want to envision educational technology to have in the classroom? And I think starting with that question is going to guide to a better design. So let's say we want to improve teaching quality. Let's say we want to enhance math skills in students. And from that, we can think about what do we have in the context? Do we have devices? Do we have connectivity? What is the current state of digital skills and AI literacy of teachers? And then thinking about all of these enabling conditions, design a holistic program that can work not only as a pilot, but hopefully, if things work well, be scaled up. I think this is important because sometimes other researchers design, and then you see like these amazing classrooms that do not exist in real life. So I think we need to focus on how do we design with the constraints we have. So I want to start with that. Who wants to?
We can go down the line. I'll just be very brief. I think the question also was about sort of training of large language models and things like that as well. I think we do need to look for other kinds of data sets. I also think that there's, I think right now we sort of rely a lot on like very large language models. And in fact, there may be an opportunity to sort of think about much smaller models that require much smaller data sets and much smaller computing power as parts of lots of really interesting things that we could be doing with students. So I think we should be thinking about some of those things as well.
Super.
Absolutely. Just to add a little bit to what Eric said, is for us as well, as we work with a number of innovators and thinking, how do we find or create this contextualized resources that these models can then train on and ensure that what the teachers get or whatever resources the students engage with are more relevant to their context. One of the things that we've also been doing is, you want these resources to be of global standards. And so there open source resources of global standards that can then be contextualized, using examples, leveraging our languages that these smaller models can then train on and ensure that as the teachers engage with it and as the students engage with it, it's more closer to home in terms of the examples and, all of the content in it that they can relate with. And so those are the challenges. And with that means that you also would need to find whether it's pioneers or experts within the context that you're working on who can effectively contextualize those resources as well. There's another question here, which I think is kind of on a lighter note. And it says, what question do you often get about AI and teachers that you hate? Because it is grounded in a bad premise, suggests a fundamental misunderstanding, and so on. Who wants to go first with that?
AI is going to dominate the world, or substitute teachers, I think are the most common ones. And I think it's a premise that AI is going to automatize everything. But one note to that, which is true, is if you are a bad teacher, then most likely you are going to be substituted by an AI. And it's happening not just on education, but in many other fields. So this is something to be concerned. So, and we as researchers or people who are really into the education community is we need to think about how we can actually help those teachers who are not well prepared, who didn't receive a good background, how we can actually help them to be the best teacher that they can be. So that's a big challenge, because it's not just integrating or supporting teachers to use technology, but it's how to rethink educational with technology. And that's a huge challenge that we need to think about in the near future, at least in my perspective.
It's okay if we don't have to go down the line as well.
Do you want to say something?
Just the phrase, and I'll go to you. AI is the devil.
I mean, there's also the AI will replace people. We often say AI won't replace people, but people who know AI will replace people who don't know AI, and I think that's an important thing to think about.
Absolutely, thank you. Another interesting question here, and I think it's also tied to what we were just talking about, AI and teachers, but it's also a very important issue typically when it has to do with EdTech interventions in general. And it's sort of like a guiding rule to say, when you're introducing technology, do make sure it's not an add-on, but it's integrated into sort of the value chain and the typical teaching and learning processes that teachers would go through. And so there's a question here that says, can we leapfrog the systemic issues with increased burden on teachers due to AI? And the examples here, so they need more professional development, they have verification, keeping up to date. And like Eric said, it's not keeping up to date like, in the internet bits, which is just like maybe every 5 years, but they need to constantly stay up to date. So what are our thoughts on leapfrogging systemic issues by introducing AI into, teaching and learning processes?
So in some of our latest conversations with some client countries, the issue of using AI to make teachers' lives easier and reduce the burden of their work has come out a lot. And I think this is a use case that should be explored, and it is a use case I would like to explore a little bit more. How do we automatize some of the administrative tasks that teachers have, which are a lot and give them time to focus on the interaction with the student. I think it's also important for teachers, as we mentioned before, to co-design all of this. We need to hear them, which are the tasks they would like to automate and in which way. One of the things I went through very quickly is that the challenge that we have is lack of time. And I think that incorporating training on AI fluency or literacy as part of the regular training is going to be key, not to be an add-on, but actually adapting to what is already out there.
Early in the days of AI, I saw a great comic, and it was someone sitting in a computer and said, I can use AI to take a few bullet points and expand it into a whole long message that I can send to my colleague. And the colleague says, I can use AI to take this great long message and condense it into a few bullet points. So I think we need to think about, like, what are the tasks that we actually want people to be doing. So sometimes we sort of move to automate these tasks instead of thinking about what's the value of that task. And is that really what we want people to be doing in the first place? So I think this is an opportunity to think about what are the duties of teachers? What does the process of learning look like? How do we think about maybe just discarding some of those things because we think they're no longer valuable? And then maybe some of the other things, maybe some of those need to be automated. But I think it's really an important point to sort of take a step back. Rather than thinking about automating them first, think about what their value is first.
Yeah, one last comment I would say is breaking the barriers that teachers have to use technology. So nowadays, if you ask logging for students and teachers, that's not the way to go, because by doing a login, you mean that the students need to know how to write and teachers need to know how to write and take time, and they need to understand this 2D interface, which is maybe not the future is going to be. So how we can actually design in a way that actually provides support for teachers without then without you to have to train teachers in a particular way. So this is an interesting dichotomy when we are trying to develop technology for teachers, but at the same time, we don't want to take more time of them to be trained and use those technologies. So the experience we have, at least in Brazil and in El Salvador, is if you are trying to design a technology and you require teachers to train all the time, they are not going to use it. So,
absolutely. And perhaps also just thinking critically about or reimagining what teacher training might look like on a more continuous, sort of process. And especially, in fact, at scale, I remember speaking to a county director of education, and she was saying, I think they do their teacher training at the end of every term, and they'll need to bring certain pioneer teachers or master teachers together, and those other teachers are expected to cascade. And when we talked to her about, it was a WhatsApp tool, and it looked like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. That's something that could help us. But it's just that continuous support that teachers would need to have, and reimagining what that continuous support and training would look like as well. I know we have 5 minutes, or probably less than that. And so I'm going to ask just one last question here. And I think it's something, Dina mentioned in her keynote speech about scale. And so it's brilliant for us to do all of these things and learn from it. But we're talking about millions of children and millions of teachers who need to be able to get the support and the scale at which we need to see this transformation, and also the urgency that brings with it. And the question is, are national education systems nimble enough to keep up with AI augmented teaching on a national scale? And just basically, what are your thoughts on opportunity areas or things that can be done to be able to support a number of these, interventions at scale? Who wants to go first?
Okay. Difficult question. In terms of scale, I think to make a national policy successful, it's interesting to think about the foreign balance model. So I think about the vision of education. So why you are using a particular technology, what purpose, what is the vision as a national policy, what is the vision of education? Then thinking about the expertise. So what kind of expertise you need in your educational system to make things work. Look into then the materials that needs to be used, and then the infrastructure. So usually what happens is when we are thinking about national policy, we go from infrastructure, then we think about the materials, then we think about the expertise, training teachers, and then we hope to achieve a vision that we don't know what it is. Have you heard about, okay, so let's put computers to every school, let's put the internet to every school. So you're thinking about infrastructure first. So if we go to the other way around, so we have much more, how can I say, hope that things are gonna work better. Think about the vision, because vision is a long term. Think about expertise, training teachers, because this is what really matters. And then you provide the material so teachers can actually achieve the vision. And if they need a better infrastructure, then work on the infrastructure. So that's, I think, is the message I would give.
That was really well said. I completely agree with that. And I hope that's what happens, because I think if we do the other way around and we just put AI in every school, we'll be back where we were. I do think, you know, the history of educational reform in most countries, in most places, in most times, is not a story of rapid and immediate change and effective longevity in that. And so that's a little bit of a cautionary tale about something needs to be different this time if we want it to be different this time. And so maybe leading with a vision somehow might sort of get us there. But if we try it the same old way, we're going to be back here or worse. And not being back here isn't so bad.
I agree with Seiji and Eric, but wanted to add something. I think it's important also we have focused in this panel on teachers, of course, but I think it's important to focus on policymakers as well, and on principals, because sometimes they are the ones who can start the change and start to implement this vision, right? Another thing that I think we need to think a little bit, well, if in a case where political support or political will, and in most cases in the Global South, sometimes a new government means everything is new. At a smaller scale, training trainers, making partnerships with universities that can do this type of training. In Lima, for example, the trainers who did this are from one of the best universities in education in Peru. And we didn't give the training ourselves because we thought that is not realistic. We need to make sure that these are Peruvian teachers training Peruvian teachers, right? So, yes, ideally political will, sustained political will, but also let's try to think about other ways.
Thank you. I know our time's up, but I'll just add one last thing to this discourse is oftentimes we've seen a number of EdTech interventions that are almost like a slapstick or an aside from existing government systems that have been set up. And so it's really looking at existing systems, looking at, again, to what Seiji said about the vision and saying, at what point in this process, in this value chain, can we integrate this AI-augmented teaching that would supercharge and help us get to that vision? And how do we do it in a phased approach, taking into consideration what already exists? And I like what you said about it's not realistic. I mean, we're working with a number of government stakeholders, and they'll say, oh, how about we just do this or do that with teachers? But we're like, beyond that, it's not going to be sustainable. And like, oh yeah, true. So now we need to think about systems that we have existing that can then support what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I think that's very critical as we start to think about skill. Thank you all so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation today.